What's up, y'all? Exotic here. This week, Grasp of Avarice is back in rotation for the featured weekly dungeon, so you know what that means. It's time to farm. Grasp offers some of the best farms in the game right now, one being the Matador 64 farm at the first boss, the Ravenous Ogre. By the way, if you're a fan of PvP in this game, for whatever reason, and you don't have a God Roll Matador, check out my guide on how to farm for one. Link is in the description and at the top of your screen. However, in today's video, we're going to cover the other best farm that this dungeon offers, and that is the current best Artifice Armor farm. If you've been looking to get some of the best armor in the entire game, then you have come to the right place. Also, I've noticed I'm getting quite a bit of comments that some of y'all don't have a team to go do these farms with. If that's the case, hop in my Discord where you can come hang out and look for some like-minded teammates who are also trying to farm. I just made it very recently, so let's see if we can get, I don't know, 50 of you in there by the end of next week's reset. I'll see you in there. And before we get into the encounter guide, I want to give you a quick overview of Artifice Armor, where to get it, and a great trick to help you get the stat spikes you're wanting for your character. So let's dive in. First, let's go over what Artifice Armor is and why it can be so amazing. Artifice Armor is just armor with an extra stat mod socket that allows you to slightly adjust the armor piece's stats. Each Artifice Armor mod provides a +3 boost to the stat of your choosing, and the best part about it is it doesn't cost any energy to equip, unlike your normal stat and armor mods. This means if you have a build setup with 4 pieces of Artifice Armor and an exotic, you can get up to a total of 12 free extra stat points for your build before you even masterwork it, which is why it's so highly desired. It can create so many opportunities to craft builds with double, triple, and sometimes even quadruple 100 stat builds. Every single one of my builds has at least a couple pieces of Artifice Armor in there. So how does one go about getting this armor? Simply put, Artifice Armor is obtainable by completing encounters in dungeons on master difficulty. Just be aware that not every dungeon has the option of a master difficulty. Those that you cannot do a master difficulty are older dungeons like Prophecy, Pit of Heresy, and the Shattered Throne. The newer dungeons like Ghosts of the Deep, Spire, Duality, and Grasp of Avarice do have a master difficulty option when they are in rotation, so they can drop Artifice Armor. Grasp of Avarice just has the current best farm for it in terms of speed, difficulty, and quality of the drops. Also, if we take a look at the loot pool for Grasp, we can see that the final boss can drop all armor pieces, which makes it great for an Artifice Armor farm. I do also want to mention, before you go farming for Artifice Armor, just know that you will only get Artifice drops for items that you have already unlocked in your collections. So for example, if you only have the leg piece unlocked in your collections from Grasp, when you complete a run of this farm on Master, you will only receive legs. So if you want a chance at all the pieces from the collections to drop in Artifice form, I would suggest doing the dungeon on normal mode to get all the armor pieces so you can complete your collections, and then coming back later for the farm. This is definitely something I wished I figured out sooner a while ago when I started farming this Artifice Armor farm, so just thought I would share that with you all. So now that you know where Artifice Armor comes from, before we go over the encounter guide, let's cover that trick to increase your chances of obtaining Artifice Armor spiked in the stats that you want, as I mentioned earlier. First thing you should know is that we have a total of 6 stats that we can have on our armor pieces: mobility, resilience, and recovery on the top half, and discipline, intellect, and strength in the bottom half. Think of these two as the 2 different stat families. Second, keep in mind that for legendary gear, each piece has a max drop chance of 68 base stats, meaning each family has a max total base stat chance of 34, with each individual stat having a possible max of 30 base and a minimum of 2. Using this knowledge, we can use our ghost mods to increase our chances of obtaining Artifice Armor with stat spikes that we prefer, like this hunter helmet that I have. Now, if you go to your ghost, in the 3rd mod slot, we have the option to equip armor mods. When equipped, these mods guarantee a drop of a minimum of 10 in the stat you choose, and are also more likely to drop with a much higher amount than that 10 that is stated, which means For example, a piece of armor with a perfectly rolled stat family would have one stat with 30 and the other with 2 base stats each, making that a grand total of 34 for that stat family. That leaves us with 34 possible base points for the other 2 preferred stats in the other family to also spike. I'll give you an example, assuming I'm farming to try and get triple 100 stat builds for my Warlock. On my Warlock, the top 3 stats I want to prioritize are Resilience, Recovery, and Discipline. If I imagine those stats split in between the 2 stat families, Resilience and Recovery are on the top family, and Discipline is by itself on the bottom family. Therefore, I would want to equip a Discipline Armorer mod on my Ghost with the hope that my Discipline is as close to 30 as possible, thus giving me a perfect roll for the bottom stat family, and a 16 spike in Resilience and Recovery for the top family, which would be best case scenario. That's what I would be hoping for right there. I know that was a lot to take in, so if you remember anything, remember this. In short, out of the 3 stats you are prioritizing building on your character, you want to equip the Armorer mod on your Ghost for the stat that is by itself between the 2 stat families. By doing this, you'll have a higher chance of obtaining an armor piece with a perfect roll for one stat family and spikes in your other 2 preferred stats in the other family. The rest is just up to RNG. By now, you should know everything about Artifice Armor that you need to in order to prep for farming. Now let's cover team comp and actually farming the encounter. For this farm, you're going to want to have 1 Warlock on Well of Radiance, a Gallhorn, a Hunter on Mobius Quiver for a 30% debuff, Orpheus Rig worked great here for that extra super shot, and a T-Crash Arctitan with Curse of the Falling Star to give you 100% increased super damage. You could perhaps switch out the Titan for another Hunter on Star Eater Scales and Gathering Storm or Blade Barrage, but just note that Star Eater Scales only provides a max of 70% increased super damage at full stacks rather than 100% increase from Curse of the Falling Star just by simply having it on. Just make sure your third teammate has enough super damage and DPS rotations to help one phase the boss, and you'll have a much better time farming. You'll also want to make sure at least one person on your team has something to counter anti-barrier champions, as there are 3 locations they can spawn: middle, left, and right. In terms of the encounter, you're going to want to grab a checkpoint for the final boss in Grasp of Avarice on Master difficulty. Once you've all rallied, run up to the front of the stage to start the encounter. Next, what you're going to do is drop a well on the staircase where the boss came from and wait for the mini bosses to spawn. You're going to want to absolutely nuke these 2 mini bosses before you get any further with the encounter. They do a lot of damage, and especially that darn Tracer Shank. He will destroy you, and he's very annoying. Don't be afraid to use your supers here either, because remember, every 10 burdens you pick up, you get all your abilities back, including your super. If you're the Hunter, you can even start with Gathering Storm for this part, and then switch over to Void before you pick up burdens and get all your abilities back. After you nuke the 2 mini bosses, have someone on your team grab the Scorch Cannon to start dropping burdens, while the other 2 go around the arena and clear all adds and barrier champions. Again, make sure someone has something to counter anti-barrier champs, or you can just do what I do and nuke them with your supers whenever you get it back from 10 burdens like this.
A lot of damage.
After you've cleared the arena, make sure everyone on your team has 20 burdens and go deposit them in the crystal in the center of the arena. Once your burdens are deposited, it's time for DPS. Drop a well, shoot Galley, pop Mobius Quiver immediately. Also make sure to space them out to prolong the debuff, and just unload everything you got into this boss. With the aforementioned team comp, you can pretty easily one phase good old Captain Avarak. From there, collect your loot and reload the checkpoint and farm until you get Carpal Tunnel. But that's going to do it for today's video. Hope you guys enjoyed this guide on how to farm for Artifice Armor and Grasp of Avarice. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions, and if this video helped you out, drop a like and consider subscribing for more Destiny 2 tips, tricks, and guides. Thank you for watching, and as always, happy farming and have a great day.